Hey gang, Seth Apter in the house. Thank you so much for joining me. I am here today to share with you my newest collection from Sizzix. I wanted to reveal it live and share with you some information about the inspiration behind the collection and each die. I wanted to share with you a look at each die and the packaging. I wanted to show you some artwork that I've made using all the dies. And then I wanted to show you just what you get when you cut the dies and how you can cut them in a little bit of a different way. And we're going to spend more time on that in a demo that is going to be coming up. And if you're watching this on recording, I don't know, in 2029, you look below in the description, you'll see a link that I will add to the recording of the live demo that's going to happen next Monday. But since this is 2029, that actually happened 4 years ago. All right, I think that's good. So let's just dive right in, my friends, and jump to this collection. This collection, it is my second release with Sizzix, and there are 5 items in it. There are 4 dies or die sets, and there is one embossing folder. Since the embossing folder is flying solo, I thought I would start with the embossing folder. So by now, you know the Sizzix new packaging, which has been around maybe a half a year. And this is the packaging for my textured impression multi-level embossing folder. In case you're wondering what it's called, you got to look way back there and you'll find it. It's Grid Graph. So Grid Graph is a multi-level embossing folder. What does that mean? That means that it doesn't just cut one level, but it actually cuts 2 levels. So there's multi-heights in here. I love the new packaging from Sizzix, in part because it comes with this wonderfully actual, usable, not disposable, keepable packet for all the collections so that you can store whatever you have in the kit. You can store it for easy access. And what makes it even easier is if you just cut out the cover will slip right in, and then you can place whatever's there behind it. Never lose anything again. This is what the folder looks like. And if you've never used an embossing folder before, oh man, embossing folders are amazing because basically they give you texture. And if you know me, you know that among many other things, like muted tone colors and layers, my middle name is texture. And we're going to demo this coming up in the next live event. But I just wanted to share with you a piece of art that kind of gives you a better idea of what this actually looks like. So inspiration behind this whole collection, you know, it's a lot of different things. It's mark making. It's the idea of texture and details. And it is a lot of NYC, where I'm from. So if you think about this as a bird's eye view of the city streets and the grid of New York City, you kind of get the picture of where this came from. Really, though, this could be anything you want it to be. This could be the view from a plane flying over the central plains of the US or Canada or anywhere else for that matter. But you also will notice there's some spots and dots, and that's in there partly because if I'm going to have lines, I also like to have curves, that contrast, but also because I kind of think of those dots as the little people walking around down there in New York City on the streets. So if you get a sense, it's kind of hard to see, but there are actually 3 levels here. So there ends up being almost like a shadow level, and it's much more obvious both in person and also when you look at the magnification that they have on the packaging. But it is a fun one, and I think one of the great things about it is that you can crank this out on a piece of paper the size of the embossing folder, but then you can actually use these elements in here as guides to cut it down into smaller pieces, and really you can take as much or as little as you want. My favorite part, hands down, is this element right here. And so this, you could cut the circle out, you can cut the square out with that circle in it. You can use it many different ways and make it your own. And that is actually one of the themes behind this collection. This whole notion that you spend money on a Seth Apter collection, you get your money's worth because you can use these in many different ways. You can use them in your own way, and you can use them all together, not only with this collection, but with my prior collection, with my future collections, and also with my other designs, because eagle eyes out there may notice that not only is this the design for the embossing folder, but in a very much smaller scale, I have a very similar design in one of my paper artsy stamps. And in a much larger scale, I have the same design in one of my stencils from Stencil Glow products. So you can use them all together to get some really interesting effects. All right, let's move on. Got a lot to show you, and probably will take a little bit longer with each of the different dies because they are chock full. So I wanted to share with you stretchers. This is the first of the 4 die sets or dies. Stretchers to me is all about mark making. It's all about borders, and it's all about little details. And I will say this over and over again, your best friend with all my die collections is a pair of scissors, which I just happen to have right here, because you can absolutely cut everything and make completely different and or slightly similar cuts. And I'm going to share some of those with you today. But this has 6 dies in it. It gives you the 4 hero dies, the shapes, and then it gives you 3 solid, actually 2 size-wise solid backgrounds plus the frame. And in fact, while this is being shown solely on the cover, it actually fits perfectly right there with the numbers coming off the edge. So let me show you what I mean. You get this die, you get this die, you get this die, and you get that die. And then you get these elements that make the backgrounds in the frame. And you get different things when you nest them in different ways. So let's just see what they actually look like when they're cut. Much more easier to tell what's happening. So we're going to take one at a time. So we're going to go here and share it and show you this one. When you cut this straight out and cut it as it's meant to be cut, you get this. You know what I'm going to do? I am going to get some paper, which I haven't thought about, so you can see this close up in a better fashion. All right, so I don't know, what is this? Squiggles, circles, a little bit like a spine to me. Everything here is abstract, which means you can make it whatever you want. And I am curious if you do have an interpretation of what everything might be. Tell me what you see this as. I also kind of see it a little bit as a zipper. I think it could be a lot of things. One of the really cool things about this element is I chose to make that center line very thin. So what that means is that you can absolutely curve these when you before you glue them, and glue them down so that they're curved and wrapping around things. And I think that just gives you, again, many, 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 many options. But there's even more options, because when you use the other element that goes with that die, you also get the background, and then you also get the frame. So putting it together as is, we're going to get that. However, there's so many more ways that you can use it. First of all, you can absolutely get out your scissor. That's my scissor, right? Right there. Okay, I can just snip, 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 snip. Snip's going to be the word of the day. Snip, snip, snip. One more snip. And I can make it look just a bit different, because now I've cut out a number of these little circles. So I have something that's just more unique. Someone else here in the comments for the live said that it looked a little bit like a leaf. So how about if we kind of honor that and we think about this as maybe being the stem? Can you imagine a whole grouping of these in different colors coming out of a die cut vase? Could be cool. We can also just go on and we can completely cut these off. So we get this little stem right here, which for me, a detail like that is well worth saving. Not to mention that we get all these little wonky circles, which, you know what? Absolutely, I'm going to be saving a bag of these when I cut, and I'm going to be gluing these to add a little details to my work. Snip, snip. All right, so what else can we do with this? Because there's so much more. Batten down the hatches, get comfortable, because this is going to take a while today, my friends, because I really want to let you in on at least, not all, but at least some of the things that you can do with each of these dies that may not be so obvious based on the art that you see on the cover. So what else can we do? Well, if we run this through the machine where the hero die is nested, then you get this, which I think is pretty cool because you can use this for layering. You can add it to this element right there. You can then put the frame around it. You have a completely different piece. You can also, with your little tiny pencil or pen, you can write in there. Maybe you're going to write numbers across there. Maybe you're going to write a very, very small letter. You can use it this way. But one of my favorite secret ways to use it, which maybe some of you are thinking, I don't know when you see this, is to use it as an edger. And this is in fact true with almost all these guys. And if you didn't know it, from my original release. So when I roll it through the machine, if I just place it like that, and we're going to explore this in the next demo, you get that. You get the notebook edge, like you've torn up. And I adore that because it's like getting a whole free die when you get the one that's here shown as it's meant to be. Loose leaf. So that is so cool. All right, let's move on. And let's move on to this one. I love this one. So this one, I don't know what it could be. It reminds me a little bit of a train track. It reminds me a little bit of a ladder. It could be a trellis. I just think this is cool because it could be so many things. And it certainly can just be a random abstract border or something else if you cut it in different ways. So once again, let me just show you. If you just cut it, you get that. Let's look this up so you can see it more closely. You'll notice, as always, a fence, absolutely. You'll notice, as always, that my lines are wonky. Now, this also gives you, when you use the appropriate border, it gives you the background, and it gives you the frame so that you can use it like that. And once again, don't forget that there's all those gaps. So those gaps, you could write a single letter in each one of these and spell out some sort of sentiment. But you can do more because you can also get your scissors. And what's the theme today? Snip, snip. We can snip this in so many different ways. First of all, you could absolutely get rid of some of these innards to give yourself a different look, to open up more space. So for example, maybe you want to put some little images underneath and there's just not a large enough gap. And you can now, under here, place three different, I don't know, maybe faces. But let's cut this way too. I can cut like that. And I can create something that looks like that, which is just a neat little element, right? I can continue and cut off even more. I can cut it this way so that rather than having an entire length, I could have a small length. And I could, again, get one of these wonky bars to use to match and work with the wonky bar that I showed you from the other element. And as was just noted in a comment, these, like my first collection, all lean into the notion of weaving. And you can absolutely weave through the element. And again, you can cut off any of these, in this case, vertical lines, in this case, horizontal lines, if you need your weaving to be shifted. But don't forget about weaving. It works with a lot of my die cuts. And remember, with this one gives you this beautiful edge that reminds us of a notebook. This one gives us a very different edge, but it's equally cool. I love that as well. And you know what? Just depending upon how you cut it, if you nest them, you also get that, and that can work as a frame, which I just think, again, is very, 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 very interesting. Moral of the story, A, snip, snip. B, think about how you can use all the dies in a way that was not necessarily evident from looking at the individual artwork that you see on the package. I made these with this whole notion in mind that people can create different ways and people can create their own. All right. Thank you for letting me take the time to try to keep this organized. All right. And we are going to move on to another one. We're still on the first die set, my friends, and we've already been here 3.5 hours, approximately. All right. I needed to have a little bit of a chunky one here because these are all, relatively speaking, delicate. I don't know if that's quite the right word, but they're thin, they're narrow. I wanted at least one chunky, and I got this one. And I am so happy with this one. You call it whatever you want. It looks a little bit like a zigzag. It looks like maybe the letter M or the letter W. I just think it's a fun one and really useful. The other frame element is sized to work with this one. And when these are cut, you get this. And notice there's all these little spots and wonky holes. That was really important to me, that these definitely have that extra flavor. And you get the background and you get the frame. Now, suffices to say, since I haven't said it, you can use this background and this frame completely separately, and the frame can be cut. You can get rid of the bottom, one of the sides. You can use these in lots of different ways. They are, in fact, phenomenally perfect, not just to frame, but maybe to layer. So to me, this is even more interesting than that. But why not use the frame and underneath put a different one? Remember, this is all about layers and everything working together. All right, so what else can you do with this? Well, you can get out your scissor, and these can become forms, letters. Like if I really wanted a cool W, I could just do that, and that could become a W. Yes, it could also become an M, or it could become a V. I think you get the drift, but you can create different things with this, and then this can also be used resized. So again, you don't necessarily always have to have it this long. You can have these smaller elements or individual elements as well. And yes, my friends, once again, you can use this as an edger, and you can create what I think is a really fun edge when you die cut this and lay that across the edge. So remember, how many times am I going to say this? Many. Don't just take a die out of the package and use it as maybe the designer initially meant. The endless creativity can happen when you think about the alternatives and doing it your way. We got one more. I love this one. I wanted numbers in my collection here, and they fit the best in here. It's a little bit of an outlier, but it works. And I adore this die. I think there's so many different ways you can use it. So first off, if you just cut it and run it through the machine, you get that. And yes, my friends, it's not always easy gluing down my die cuts because they all have these very thin portions. But you know what? It's worth the effort because those little details, that tiny little bit that comes off at the end at the top, makes all the difference. I love this one. It's the numbers 1 through 9. So what can you do with this? You can do so much with this. First of all, let's just say you wanted to use this more on the edge of something as a design. Snip, snip. You can get your scissor. You can cut right up there. And you can just, for example, keep the even numbers. And those can be placed right at the edge of your page. Of course, they don't have to be placed at the edge. They can be placed anywhere. What if I just wanted numbers? You know, sometimes you need a number. And these, I just got to show you one more time. These layered numbers are very, very cool. You can just go ahead and either write at the number, snip, or snip across close so that you still have these little lines coming out. That's up to you where you want to snip it. And you can get a whole number set that you can use completely separately from the die. I always talk to people about if you have a stencil and it's a large stencil, cut your stencil into segments. You can even do that with a rubber stamp. I know some people are hesitant to do that. With the die, you crank it through the machine, you get die cut, you can get it again. Maybe it won't feel as precious, so it makes more sense that you're willing to just cut these up while you're watching Netflix and have a bowl of numbers. And then you're left with this. And I think this is phenomenal too. I have this in a couple colors right here. I think this would be an amazing element to use. And remember, weaving. So earlier we wove through this one. This could be woven in a different direction. It could be woven through each of these elements so that you have multiple colors, multiple shades coming through with things maybe dangling off the bottom. And let's not forget that if you use one of the frame and background elements, that you can then glue that on and have the numbers pop off the side. And cool gluing tip, if you glue just these lines, then you can, when you place your numbers down on your piece, you can have all or some of them be dimensional and lift up. It's a whole different effect, and it gives you a whole other way to use the same die with a twist. All right, so that, my friends, is stretchers. Let's just take a look at the art in motion now that you've seen some of the things you can do. So now that I know you're familiar with the dies, the 4 individual dies, obviously this is the main die. And this piece is kind of the star in the show. I really like that one. And you may or may not notice, and you probably don't, because I'm holding this so far away. But if you look right here, and you look right here, pieces of these internal dies that were cut are used. It's the littlest detail. It adds dimension, interest, texture. It adds a lot. And I think this is a good example how something that, I mean, literally, it's these little circles coming off of this little line. It actually works and looks good. It feels like maybe these two pieces are separate and they're connected. I think it looks like a lot of different things. All right. Let me not get caught up in that because I also want to show you this one. Obviously using that die. So this is basically used as is, but you'll notice I did cut off the edge of the frame. Did the opposite there, cut off the edge of the frame. Here I used it with a solid background. Here I placed just a portion over a background that has a little bit of a pattern. Here, maybe it looks more like a ladder, but you'll notice it highlights in that space the word one, which might be lost in here. And if you look here, it's just, again, a little segment of it used on the edge for more interest. And what I really love about this is that the painting technique that I did here, you can see that kind of echoes the flavor and the feel of that. So there's something meta going on in this one. I got more that don't go anywhere. We got that one, the chunky one, the zigzag. It's just front and center here. It's the star of the show. It's to show you that even a shape that defies perfect description, that's abstract, can be the focal point. Very strong focal point because it's used in black and repeated 3 times. We got the backgrounds in the frame, and you'll notice, please notice, we've used little sections of that to connect these elements bottom to top. If you happen to be working on, I don't know, a 4-foot long piece, just lay these down side by side. There's no reason why you can't fill the entire size of whatever substrate you're working on. You can make these smaller, you can make these larger. Don't just use them as is. I got one more, and that's this one. And again, this is front and center. This is the star of the show. You see it on the background. It's much darker for contrast. There's the numbers. They are all glued down. I do want to make mention that if you are a city person, I don't know, I kind of see these as these really skinny, tall skyscrapers that New York City now has, you know, but if you're a country person, I don't know, aren't these called cottontails? Isn't that what a cottontail looks like? I echoed the framing in the background with a larger frame in the background and then cut off the numbers, and I used these to add more elements and also to have them go in the opposite direction so there's some contrast. And lots of people are seeing these as fences. Absolutely. Remember, I could have gone further and I could have woven in and out of all these elements as well. All right. I think it's time to move on because now we've been here 45 hours. Okay. Oh, I got to show you the next one. I got to show you them all, but I love the next one. I love them all, but I really love this one. And this one I think is going to take a little education. This one is called paper cuts. It's spelled C-U-T-Z. It's got 4 dies. Oh, I should mention, subtle hint about something coming in the future. If you can read that, it says paper cuts number 1. You know, that suggests that there might be a 2 down the line. So anybody who falls in love with these, be ready. These developed with an idea. And I have to say that the artwork that I created to share and show these doesn't exactly explain the idea because it wouldn't make sense on the packaging, and you'll see why when I show it to you. But basically, my idea was that, oh, I'm Seth. I like everything grungy. I like everything wonky. I like everything imperfect. I like everything to have gaps and holes and marks and spaces, and I don't like anything simple, plain, solid, even. No, So I wanted dies that I could use with other dies to make them more Seth-like. more wonky, more mixed media, more oomph. And these were born out of that. So first I'm going to show you just if you use the dies as is. So we have that one and that one, and that one and that one. So there's 4 dies. Cutting the background is easy. You just roll that solo thin lit frame through, and then you get that. Again, uneven, wonky, a little edgy. And if you roll this one through by nesting it in this one, you want to match it up because it does fit perfectly. You get this beauty. You get your Swiss cheese slice. All right, that wasn't my intention, but let's be real, people. So then you can layer this on like that, and you can have whatever's coming through show through. And you have this element, a separated element. Now, obviously, you could also layer this on a larger piece. I don't have a larger piece in front of me, but let's pretend my larger piece was white. It's a clean card front. I layer that. I put a sentiment across it. I got a beautiful element. I could also just offset this a bit like that, as I did in the packaging art. Always think about offsetting just a touch because it gives the sense of depth, shading, and shadow. But that's not even why I designed these dies. Actually, let's just show you the other one before I share with you the real reason why I designed these. We got our background and we got the front, the hero die. And I love these little elements. We'll talk about those. And you know what? I just love this so much. I find myself cutting it and recutting it and recutting it. It feels a little bit like a piece of toast to me. I don't know. Yeah, a little slice of something. But always remember that the layering changes everything. Just so interesting. But now I want to show you the 2 ways to use these that really excite me, and really it's how they were meant to be used. So what I'm going to do is I am going to just move these a bit, and I'm going to take a die cut. So this is a die cut. Happen to have it here. It's also from Sizzix. It's from 49er Market, designed by Katie Petit, and it's a stamp and die set. Now, I could have stamped on this to make this even fancier, but I didn't have a chance. But what I did do was I took this little guy, this die, not my die, but a die, and I ran it through the machine with this over it. Now, I could have just done that, but I didn't because I really wanted to get it all. So I ran it through like that, and then ran it through like that, and then ran it through like that. And that gave me, drum roll please, that. And that is why I created these dies, so that you can alter every single die you have that has some solidity to it, that's a little bit solid, to get these marks, to get these spaces, to get these grungy elements. I just think that's phenomenal. And when you die cut it in a darker color for some contrast, you really begin to see the beauty that you get. I just think that's so cool. Seriously, like, I love everything that I do, because if I didn't love it, and trust me, I make things I don't love, that never makes it to market. But I really love this one. I'm going to be using it 1,000,001 times. But wait, there's more. There's more. There's more. Why do you have to use a die cut? Why do you have to use the shape? Why can't you just apply these elements to larger sheets of paper? Well, you can. So for example, this one, I ran, I'm missing a piece of something. Okay, this one I just ran through this piece of paper 3 times. You can see the orientation. I varied it that way. that way and that way, so I can get these elements so that when you place it on a contrasting background, cue the contrasting background, you get that. And I just think that is so different and unique. If I were making a card, let's say the card, and you know, when you see this, you'll see why I don't make that many cards. Let's just pretend that this is the card, right? I am going to run this through my machine twice. And then when I fold the card, I'm actually going to have that cut through the card so that you can see through it. And then I could put something backing it, or I can let it go right through to see what's on the sentiment inside of the card. So those are the real reasons why I design paper cuts. One, but I absolutely adore these elements too. Let me put these aside and share with you some of the art I made. And you'll get a better sense of it. So this is used as is. The art I have here to share with you, at least for today, are pieces that use the thinlit frame as well as the main die. And again, this looks looking a little bit like Swiss cheese. So if I use some yellow with a little green, I don't know, maybe it would be, it's a little moldy, but that could be an interesting card as well. You can see I layered it multiple times with different colors. And one of the things that I absolutely love to do is I love to use offcuts. It was a big element of my first collection that the offcuts were usable. And it is true in the second collection as well. So let's just move to the second piece of art where I've used the other die as a frame. I've layered it so that there's some dimension and some depth. And then what I did was I ran it through multiple times with other colors so I could then take out these elements from the other cuts and place them back in the areas that I wanted. I didn't fill all of them in because I wanted some of that black background to show, but I filled in some of the ones that I like the best. This way you can make this look different every time. And who says it has to be this size? You could cut it right there and just use that as part of your element. Those inserts, they don't have to just be inserted. You can use them as fun little detailed elements. This has got to be my absolute favorite. I adore it no matter which direction you lay it. But I kind of like that one too. And I really like this one. It looks a little bit like an arrow. And I don't know what this is, but it's kind of industrial and cool. And this is just a frame, one of the frames cut to add another element. And so when you look back here, this offcut that comes from there was used here. It wasn't inserted. It was just cut twice and layered. So it almost feels like it's inside, but it also feels like it's popping up. And yes, metallic behind these, amazing. So lots you can do with paper cuts. Number one, stay tuned. But these are paper cuts number one. Oh yeah. And you know what? When you roll these through, don't forget to save everything, because you all know we save everything. And just how cool are these to use, just to have around as many die cuts for little details that you can add to the work that you do, whether it's a journal, whether it's a mixed media piece, whether it's a card, whether it's a scrapbook, whether it's anything. I think these are going to become staples in a lot of what you see me create coming up. Now I'm going to pretend I'm embossing, and I'm going to do my very best. I'm going to do it on camera, and I'm going to try to just tap these back in. And I knew it would be a disaster. You know what? Anytime there's eyes and you try to do something like that to save time, it backfires. So everybody, take a breather while I take the time to stuff these back in. And I think if this were a game on a game show, I would not make it to the next round. All right, let's continue because we got more. We do have more. Okay, I want to take you to Word Wafers 2. Word Wafers 2. Why is it called Word Wafers 2? Because you already had Word Wafers 1. So these are 3 words. I adore words. I adore text. I love letters. This is an important part of most of the art that I create. So these spell 3 words: stories, memories, and dreams. You can't exactly tell how they come together by the cover art, nor are you certain why it says there are 24 dies here. So I will share and show you. You get each of the words. So you get memories. Oop, I didn't clean that die very well. Stories. I guess I could flip it this way, but it's really hard to read. So let's keep it this way. Memories, stories, and dreams. You get frames that work perfectly well for each, so that when you cut them, let's move these down, you're going to get the word, you're going to get stories, you're going to get memories, you're going to get dreams. Let me take those off and kind of just show you the detail, because there's all these little gaps, very thin lines. You got to work to glue my stuff down. But all those fine details, I just think are so cool. But it also comes with the frame that allows you to create a background that works perfectly. Let's see if I can match this up. I think this is stories. Yes. Then, just by rolling through the frame on its own, you get that, but you also get a thin frame element that you can glue around. And if you run this through and nest the words and the frame, you get a larger frame element. So you get 2 size frames. You can use both with different colors. You get the background and you get the words. But wait, there's more, because this does not 24 dies make. And that's because you also get letter dies. So you get every letter that is in here, you get a die, just like in Word Wafers 1. Purpose of that, multi-purpose. You can see here, right? These letters, when they're cut, they have these little holes in it. So they're drippy, they're wonky, they're mixed media, they're sethified, so that you can use those to layer over these. So if I get just a few here, as an example, I could get my little T, and I could place my T over the T there, and I can then begin to layer, make it my own, make it more interesting. If I offset it a little bit, it gives a sense of dimension, and I can make it really, really unique. So I can use the word alone, or I can use the letters on top of the word, or maybe I could just use some of the letters. Maybe I'll only put, I don't know, maybe T and the O. I'm not sure if I cut an extra O, but if I did, yes, I did actually. Let's see, the T and the O kind of blends a little bit, but you get the idea that I'm going to then highlight the word to. Now, one of the things to think about is that all these letters, which are really cool, can be used separately. So while this is not an entire alphabet, you could probably spell, I don't know, a gazillion and 3 words that have nothing to do with dreams, memories, or stories. So let's just take a few here. This was not pre-planned, my friends. So I don't even know what I'm going to get. I could spell the word mod. Okay. I could spell the word dot. These are the best words ever, right? I can spell the word rot. I mean, there's also an E, so I could spell the word rotor, all those. I could spell the word tides. Of course, I can't because I don't have an E here, but you get the picture. So I am absolutely going to figure out. Oh, here's my E. I knew I had an E. I'm absolutely going to figure out some of what I would think of is the best words that you can use with this alphabet. So now I want to say you can spell the words ride. You can spell the words rider. You get this, right? Now I'm kind of lost in it. Um, let's see. Yep, you get the drift, right, my friends? All right, so let me just show you a few completed pieces to give you a better sense of what they look like when they all come together. I continue to try to be organized here off camera. I love the fact that if you're watching live and you see the comments as they're scrolling, lots of people are joining and giving us words such as road, tomato, Midas, storm, ride, rest, retire, mist, memo, retreat, and more, M-O-R-E. And what was mentioned here was that you actually, out of the letters that are in here or in word wafers 1, and certainly together, if you cut off little elements, you can actually make the entire alphabet. You don't have an F, you just cut off the little tail on the E. So what do these look like? Just so you know, by way of magic, how this cover was made. This cover was made by me. So this is what it looks like in IRL. There's dreams. So you see this is reduced. It's actually a larger size. Here's stories. And then here's memories, which full size can't even fit. So that's what they look like IRL. You can see the frame elements there. You can see the layering of the letters. And then when you put them in art, here is the word stories. And unlike this one is showing it to you with the thin frame. So that's stories. We have dreams, which uses no frame, but layers 3 of the backgrounds in 3 colors so that you get a sense of more depth and you get a sense of dimension. And you may or may not know that even the word dreams has been layered twice, the entire word, and then the letters have been added. So you get what is really like a dimensional element. And then we have memories, also no frame. And I thought that with this piece, with the background I made, solid black was the perfect way to share that. And we have a few more words coming on the live, mom, and maybe my favorite of them all, mess. All right, so that's word wafers 2. I got one more for you. Only one more. Oh, it may be my favorite. I don't know. I keep saying things are my favorite. I'm just say they're all my favorite. But this is the one that's large and in charge. This one is Diamond District. I can't promise forever, but I think, well, certainly in the first release and in this release and moving forward, maybe in the next release, maybe the one after that, who knows after that, I am always going to have a huge die. I just think that they make such a big impact and give you so many options. So from the perspective of, let's take a look at what the size of this one is. Let's take a look at Diamond District. This beast fits in the big shot. It's just slightly smaller than Waffles, which was the first large die from the original uh, release. Now, I love this one. I'm hoping you all do too. I kind of see it as a little bit of like a grate, not a GER, not a GREAT, but a GRATE. But I don't know, it's kind of great too. I love it for lots of reasons. It's so big. I think the shapes are really interesting. It's got wonky edges, wonky edges. It can be an entire background that you use with something in the front. You can cut it down. You can cut it multiple times and lay them side by side and create a much larger background. You get the drop offs, all these little diamondy, wonky, circly shapes, which you can replace some or all of them. Trust me, it takes a long time to replace all of them. You get these little details coming off the edges. You get these gaps in the space. There's so much I love about this. So let's take a look at what it looks like when it's cut. So let's show you it cut, just so you get a better sense of it. I just think, I used to be very self-conscious about being as vocal as I am about how much I love this stuff. But you know what? I can't control it. The joy that I feel when I create something that didn't exist before and see it being formed and then get it for the first time and then see the packaging and then create art with it and then see you guys respond to it and then see how you use it. It just brings me endless joy. And I've long ago given up the idea that I shouldn't just emote, because if someone else made these, I'd be emoting too. So I cut it again, really, because I did want to show you how amazing it is when you layer and do what I call the bump. So here it is, just as is. If I say move it, the top layer down just a bit and to the right just a bit, you get that shadow effect. It's so dramatic. It just makes it really feel 3D-ish. You know what? And what do I always say? If you're going to do it twice, you might as well do it 3 times. So let's just do that again. I mean, can you imagine layering this like 50 times? Maybe I need to do that and just keep bringing the layers, the elements. It becomes almost real. Now, if you were to do this with embossed metallic embossing powder, or if you were to use foil, you would get something that would be really like a metal grate. And if you did something with patina and some shine, you rust, you could take this in so many places. But you could also take it in so many places with a little scissor, right? Because this collection is all about the snip snip. So let's just go ahead and let's go to this one. And there are so many ways I can cut this, and I can only show you a few because eventually it's going to be cut. I could literally go right here and just split this in two. So now I have two. And I could, you know what? That's how it was. I could re-glue it with just a little gap right there. How cool would that be? And remember, weaving, my friends, weaving. That's as important as the snip snip. I could weave these two together, literally with thread or with paper. I could weave these elements so that they're attached, yet they're separated. I could also say, you know what? I didn't like this global design because it doesn't fill up this whole large paper. But if I cut it like that and I place this there and I place that there, I have a completely different design and it fills the paper. But what if I'm using a card front and this is way too big? Well, you know what I'm going to do, right? I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to, in a sort of a grungy, fussy, cutty way, I'm going to snip this down until it fits on whatever size element I'm using. If I don't think it's designed well, you know what? I can cut off any piece I want so that I can get it so it feels like it's a little bit more composed. I could also just use some of these little elements. I mean, these are sort of diamonds. It's called Diamond District, my friends. But don't these look a little bit like X's there? So why not do something like that? And I could have something that is full on X'd and just have that as my element. But these are not X's. These are now more diamond shaped. So why can't I just, let's create a single border that can be used as well. And I can just use that element. So many things you can do with these. I've only just begun to really explore. So one of the things I want you to think about is the different ways that you can use these and how you can create them, and then show me online and tag me. All right, so let me just show you one single piece of art that I have to share that uses Diamond District and also uses the word stories from the word wafers too. You can see this is on a cradled wood panel. And it's quite simple, but I think really effective. And it's a little not more is more. But those of you who've been watching me lately know I'm sort of leaning into the sort of maximal minimalism. But what I really want to share and show you here is how cool it looks when you use your own painted paper. So this was paper that I used the gel plate to make and cut it up. And then you see in just a few of the sections, I placed back in some of the offcuts. I didn't have the patience to put more in because it is a puzzle, my friend. And this could be a puzzle that you give your kids or grandkids or you use. But I just love the fact that there's just a little bit of those colors popping. You can see the way I layered it so that it's dimensional. And then this also is quite layered. So there are 4 different levels of backgrounds. There's no frame. And there is just the single stories die with different color letters over it. I really love how this came out. And I think it shows you several things. It shows you that with the right scale, this element is a gorgeous background piece. It sings. I also want to share with you and show you that sometimes a word, a simple word, can be the star of the show. And in fact, I think that word says it all. I am telling my stories with the designs in this collection so that you can use it and tell your own stories. I hope you like these. Please, if you get them and use them, absolutely tag Sizzix and tag myself. I want to see what you do and what you create and how you use them differently. I absolutely know this group that is watching, and I know that you guys are going to come up with things that I never even thought of, that would never occur to me. I want to thank you all a million times over. Thank you for all the love. Thank you for the sales so far. And I really appreciate you all. Have the best day ever.